a faculty panel talking about different policies and things related to progressing in the department and questions that you guys had and submitted to us. So I'm not all sure who is participating. Maybe it's all the faculty that are present. But those that are participating, I guess maybe do we want to come up, or are we just going to sit here? Or who's going to ask the questions, Peter? And how's this kind of running? Oh, that would be great.
It was an IPSO run. They had the questions that they put out. I think they asked for you guys to kind of be to field those questions.
If you guys want to sit together, you can. If you just want to be where you are and we just know to look to you guys for answers, that's cool. We can maybe start by having you tell us some of the questions that were sent to you guys that you reviewed in your faculty meeting last week, and then maybe more questions will grow out of that. Is that something? Oh yeah. Maybe I should be up at the front so the camera can pick you all up.
I think Peter and Randy ought to be up there too.
That's just too many cooks. We'll be the peanut gallery.
So Rick, you're looking up the questions?
I'm trying to look up the questions, but if you want to go ahead and ask them, we can get started.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I know one thing that has been mentioned recently is there's a change for the master's students in the design track. That they're either, it used to be you had to take Stats 1 and the research class, but now it's just one or the other. And I was wondering how that change was made and how you guys figured that out, and is there something similar for PhD students as well?
So the idea was that those that are taking a more design track need more design courses, and those that are in the research and evaluation track do need more of the research evaluation courses. So as far as like whether you've got a current program of study that has Stats 1 on it, that's not a problem because Stats 1 remains one of the options. The option now, and this was approved just about a few weeks ago, actually just a couple weeks ago right before Christmas, that you can now as a master's student take either Stats 1 or 560, which is the instructional development course. So if the idea is, assumedly, if you're a design student, you would probably take 560. If you're something else, you would take Stats 1. But that's not necessarily spelled out. It's really between you and your chair. But you can take that option now of one of those two classes for your master's degree. Not true for the PhD, because the PhD, even if you're a design student, the PhD is a research degree, and you just need to know stats for a PhD. So that's, I think technically both are required, aren't they? Isn't 560 required for the PhD? So they're both required.
560.
Is it not?
It's pretty rare.
560 instructional design?
No, development.
No, design development.
Oh.
So, but I know that stats will remain required for the PhD. Yeah.
So what if we take statistics 511 and 512?
And the same thing with other stats classes that are outside of our department. They often can substitute, but what you would do is talk to the teacher. Say, here's the syllabus of what I have. Is it similar enough to what you're teaching that we're confident you've got the skills? That's kind of the, which happens with if you take classes from anywhere, really. So one of the questions was, can I take courses outside of the department, like the business school? And we actually really encourage that. There's a couple things going on there. One, you have a set of specialization courses that are basically just electives. And it's awesome if you want to go take those in the business school or sociology department or wherever fits with what you're trying to do. And so you're welcome to take those as part of your specialization credits. If it's something that you took, like you took a instructional design class at a different university, and you want to transfer it in, it would be the same process. Bring the syllabus, let's see if it actually aligns with what we teach in our course. Yeah?
So I just want to say this back, because this is really important to me that I understand it fully, because I feel like I've gotten different answers as I've asked different people. So we can choose either one of this, if we're on a design track, which
Master's
I'm on,
student.
as a master's student, we can choose either one of those stats classes and 560.
Not stats. You choose,
stats one?
you still have to take the intro to research methods,
That's
right? 550.
50, okay.
And then stats 1, you either have the option of stats 1 or programming, basically.
Which is
Instructional
560, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 550 is required no matter what. And then we've got 560 if we're on the design track. And that's all approved, and we can run with that if that's, okay.
Yeah, the confusing part of that is that 550 used to be a 6-credit course, which
Right.
included the stats 1 and the research design, or research methods. Now, we're splitting that up into 2-3, but we're kind of caught up in a red tape kind of thing to actually make it happen. Right now, both of those classes are offered as a 692R class as different sections of it.
Mhm.
And so you have to make sure that you're getting the right 692R
Yeah.
to get.
The important thing is actually, because the course numbers may change, it may be in the future that, I can't remember, I think stats might end up becoming 550, I can't remember. So the important thing is to remember the course description. There's research methods, and there's stats 1.
Okay,
And
Everybody takes research methods.
everyone takes research methods.
I
okay.
think the new number for that's gonna be 540.
I think it's eventually going to be 540, but it's not yet, or maybe it is, I don't
Unless
know.
things
We're in that
happen.
process,
Okay,
so.
all right,
Go.
great.
So now that like it really like matters in terms of coursework, like what emphasis you have, is the emphasis just something you like to say like on this one, but your coursework doesn't have to reflect it at all, or like how does that work? Like your master's project, let's say. I mean, obviously it should be in concordance, but do they necessarily have to be in concordance?
Yes.
Okay.
And the way you decide if it's really in concordance is you form a committee and they say it fits. If your committee says, yes, this makes sense to us, then that's what you go with.
If you came to me and you wanted me to be on your committee and you said you were a design student, but you didn't take instructional design or instructional development, I probably wouldn't sign off on your program of study, because I couldn't look you in the face and tell you that you'd really be competitive that way. You know what I mean? But if you came to me and said, I'm an evaluation student and these are the courses, it would be different, the expectation. So you basically declare that when you're filling out your program of study, and just tell the committee what it is you're hoping to do and become.
And if you don't know, by the time you're supposed to fill it out, you fill it out as well as you can,
Yeah.
and then you change it later when you figure it out. And the committee agrees. Did you find any more of those questions?
Do you have them, Mike?
I'm getting Courtney to send me her a copy, but I don't know exactly who she sent it to. I have another question I can ask in the meantime. There have been some students that, well, are interested in getting a PhD in IP&T after they get a master's in IP&T. If it's in the same specialization, design for instance, then it looks like you'll run out of courses to take before you meet the credit requirement for the PhD program. Is that a problem, or are we just exhausting our courses, or how would that work if I wanted to get a PhD in the same emphasis as my master's?
We talked about that one a lot last time, and Michelle, you had a good answer.
Right, master's students, if you go from a master's to a PhD, you can carry in up to 36 hours, basically your whole program, into the PhD program. On top of that, there are certain core courses for the PhD that were not required for the master's that you'll have to fulfill, as well as more internship, more seminar, dissertation credit, and specialization. And now the program has been changed, plus the project. So if you have a master's project, typically fulfills the development project in the PhD track, and then you'll have to do one of the other projects. And then the program has just been changed, the requirements, instead of 12 credit hours of internship, it'll be 6, plus another 6 of specialization. So those courses will be taken above the master's credit. So you shouldn't lose anything other than maybe 3 credits of your master's project.
I guess what I mean is I'll have taken so many courses as a master's student that there won't be many left for me to take as a PhD.
That's
That's
where
correct.
673 courses come in. 693, excuse me.
I wouldn't worry about that.
Those are independent study,
Okay.
and that's where you start defining your own.
Well, the understanding too is that if you had 90 credits for a PhD and you took a master's, you basically knock out 30 credits, is what I think
Right.
Michelle's saying.
Mhm.
So you have fewer, it's as if you had started your PhD and taken all those classes as a PhD student.
And what he's worried about though is how do you continue to advance beyond courses that are just the standard.
Well, that's
Number of courses.
optimistic. That's very kind of you to think that's my question. I was just wondering if I was going to get in trouble.
And I think one thing too, if you look at it, there aren't that many credits that are actually required from our department. A lot of them are like research credits,
Yeah.
which are our department, EIME, and all sorts of other things. And there's also the specialization credits, which can be kind of, it actually is a really good idea to go outside of the department oftentimes to take, you know, a cognition course. In the psych program, the counseling psych has like cognition courses, there's business courses if you're into organizational development and, you know, things like that, so.
Cool. Thank you for answering that. I was nervous. How are we doing on finding the other questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes, but, so, is there any way for students to get an insight into the 2 to 5 year forecast of what professors are going to be doing in terms of retiring or anything like that?
Are you retired? There's no way to forecast retirement.
No?
They carry you out of here stiff, then you're retired.
Is there like a place where things are posted like that, or is it just informal grapevine?
The course schedule, the offerings of courses, Randy Davies is in charge of that.
and each faculty member has a copy of it. We don't put it on the website because it changes from time to time. But you can come and ask us. I mean, I've shared with my advisees and said, here's when this course is planned to be taught again. You know, when they're putting together their program of study, I'll kind of sit down and talk to them about that.
It's not quite true, because on the website, there is all of the courses, and it kind of says when they're offered, and Peter just updated that, and it's fairly good.
That's true, thank you.
But the things happen in the department with the School of Education, and we were required to move some courses to align with the research courses, and then it's got moved back now because that's installed. Things happen that way when things offered. Also, the advanced courses, 692Rs, that's up to the individual faculty members, what they teach in them. And some teach things like Charles Graham every other year teaches a blended learning. You know, that depends on the individual instructor, and we don't know what they're going to teach in 2 years.
A lot depends on what happens to them. If they're in administration, they can't teach as much. If they're, you know, asked to teach a Book of Mormon class, because sometimes that'll happen and they don't get to teach as much. And so I think, especially with all the mix-up at the college level with research classes, we don't really know ourselves exactly what we're going to be teaching too far ahead. We kind of have rough ideas, but.
But the core courses and the standard courses that you're offering, they're all set. You'll know when those are off.
So I understand that everything is subject to change. How far out does Peter's, what did you call it?
If you go to the courses, the course list, if you go to the IP&T page and you go to courses and that course list, I put on there what's current right now, and I think that is about
2 years.
2 years. So.
And then it usually just repeats. I mean, typically,
That's the
you
idea.
know, so.
Yeah, it's supposed to just be a cycle that we go through over and over, but it's changed every semester since we made it.
With
up.
minor changes, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we found the list of questions. Here's one. Can you explain what is required for a writing prerequisite? Do you have to take our writing class, or is there another way to satisfy the writing requirement?
There's another way to satisfy it. There's an English course that you can take. But why would you do that when you can be taught by a member of the faculty, and the subject matter that you're going to be reading and writing about is related to the field? It's a chance to get some deeper background, some better background. I'm not sure if I would take the other course.
And maybe a little history on the writing course. It's not that we're trying to like be mean to you guys. What we found is that the #1 reason that keeps people kicking around way past when they wanted to leave is their writing. It's the dissertation or it's the thesis. That is by far and away more difficult for people than coursework. And people were taking the English class as a prerequisite. It's English 315, technical writing, and it wasn't really helping them a whole lot. And they were still really struggling with their writing. So we created the academic writing course to help students be better prepared for the kind of writing they do as graduate students. And that course is typically taught once in the spring semester and once in the fall semester. And I think there was a question about waiving it. You can waive it, that's kind of up to your advisor's prerogative, but typically, we've set the bar pretty high. And most people don't get a chance to waive it, because it'd be doing you a disservice to say you're ready when you're really not, and most people aren't. Most people need more writing practice to get ready for the kind of academic writing you do in the master's program.
Can I say about writing? Writing is not what the hard part is. It's figuring out what you're going to say. It's getting an idea and then thinking it through in argumentative terms. That is, in terms of an argumentation. If you don't know what your thesis is and how you're going to argue for your thesis, that's the kind of thing, that's the failing that students have. They know how to write words, they know how to write pretty sentences, they know how to use big words, but they don't know what they're saying, and they don't know how to reason through an argument, and that's the critical skill.
I think you might have mentioned this, but if you get over 5 on the writing portion of the GRE, that could be grounds for an exception or a pass on the writing thing, but like you said, it's probably better because most people need the extra help anyways.
Well, it's up to advisor prerogative, really. There's really not a hard fast rule, but I think several of us kind of, I look at that and say, if you've gotten a 5 or above, you probably are going to be okay. But I would have the conversation with you still as a student. If you were my student, I would talk to you and say, you got a 5 on this. Tell me about your writing background, and do you feel like you're ready for this kind of writing and that kind of thing?
Still needs to be addressed somehow, even if you're not going to take the class.
And we checked, I think last year's applicants of those coming in from last year, between PhD and masters, we had 2 who met that criteria, so.
Only 2? Wow. I know I wasn't one of them.
We weren't asking you to confess.
You don't have to confess yourself.
But that's about typical, I would say, so we can cross most of those.
Another student submitted question, what is the best way to select a committee chair?
That's what that little kooshball thing.
We put our pictures on. Actually, we probably should.
So you know
That'd
the
be
funny thing, that was actually written on our responses, but then I started laughing, and Andy wasn't in that conversation, so apparently.
So that's the official answer.
There we go. All right, kooshball, there we go.
Well, I'd like to advise people to get to know everybody. When you're first entered into the program, you're given a temporary advisor, and sometimes people think that that's their chair and they have to stick with them through the whole thing. That's not true. That's a temporary, get you started role that we play. And then you should just be using every class you take and every chance you have to sit down with all the faculty just to get to know them, what their interests are, what your interests are. And then propose to them, this is something you're working on, I'd like to expand on it. Or this is something I'm doing that seems really similar to what you're doing. Could we work on this together? And through that process, then you basically figure your way into the chair and who the other committee members ought to be for your final product. You can have a committee, you have to have a committee by the 2nd semester, right? The program study
Second semester for
to sign off on
masters,
your study list.
second semester for masters, and the second year, the beginning of the second year for doctoral students.
But that committee doesn't have to be your final committee. That's the committee that advises you on your way through the program. And then you may find that that's just not quite the committee you wanted for the dissertation level, for the master's project, so you change it. And none of us are offended, we're all happy to share the load with anybody else.
Nobody's heart is broken if you decide to go and be advised by someone else. So you're the customer. You find who you want to be mentored by.
And change, excuse me, changes can be made to your study list, your program of study, and your committee all the way up until graduation. Until that point where you get ready to schedule your defense, so.
Yeah.
Remember that part. Scheduling your defense is the last, yeah, thank you.
One thing that I think is really helpful, it's one thing that I did as a student, and I know that I asked my advisees to do it, and I think it's really helpful, is when you're thinking about a chair, don't just walk into someone's office and knock on the door and say, hey, will you be my chair? I think you're a pretty good professor, and let's go, you know. Really what you should be doing is trying to find someone with similar interests, and the best way to do that is, I would say, write up a 1 to 3 page kind of summary of your idea to try to really get your, and it's going to be rough and it's going to change, and that's okay, but write down a couple research questions you're interested in if you're doing research, or a couple design ideas for your design project, and kind of where you're coming from theoretically, and what you're hoping to accomplish, and what your timeline might be, and then you can sit down with the chair and say, does this topic work for, how exciting is this topic for you? Does this timeline work with you? Oh, you're going to be on sabbatical for a year, you know, maybe this isn't going to work, you know, kind of a thing. But you have that conversation, and then go around and do the same thing with all the committee members. Just send them your 1 to 3 page a couple days ahead of time, say, can I meet with you for 20 minutes? They'll have a chance to actually read through it, and then when you come in, they can just say, sounds great, I have a couple questions for you, and usually they want to know what their role is going to be, not just, you know, oh, I want you on the committee so you can sign the form, you know, but rather, you know, I would really like your help with the qualitative methods, or I would really like your help with this theoretical framework that I'm struggling with, or you know, I'm proposing to do 2 articles, and maybe you could co-author 1 article with me, and the other professor's going to help me with the other article, but somehow clarify for us what the role is, because it's really hard. Each of us is advising a dozen students, and we're on committees for another 20, and we don't really know exactly what our role is on all of these committees, and it's really helpful if you clarify for us what our role is going to be on your committee to help you.
Just because of what Rick said, it's true. There are a lot of committees that we're on. When you come in and you make an appointment and you want to talk about something, when you come in at the first of the meeting, if you'll set the context for us,
Remind us what you're doing.
we'll seem less confused. But if you come in and you say, well, about that one thing I talked to you about 6 months ago, and well, I decided not to, but then I could do this, and we say, okay, right, well, this is going to take an hour. So you can shorten it and reduce the pain for all of us if you just describe to us what your business is, what your purpose is, and what you want to accomplish in that meeting. That's courtesy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, anytime anyone's good.
Okay, so when I was checking my progress report, it says like some are deficient and some are fulfilled, and some of the words are kind of, I don't know if it's an acronym or what, but it says like doc survey deficient, and I really don't know what those words mean.
The doctoral survey is a document that's given to you after you defend your dissertation. So when you schedule your defense, there's a packet of material that's sent to the chair, and it includes the scoring, it includes the grade change form, the doctoral survey, I think copyright forms, ETD forms, because you'll submit your dissertation electronically as well. And so the doctoral survey is a requirement for graduation. It's not anything you worry about, though, until after you defend, and it will be in that packet. And all the instructions that you need to complete it are there as well.
Any other acronyms Michelle knows the answer to as well?
Which is one thing to be aware of too, is our role as chairs, we're helping you with the argumentation, we're helping you with the ideas, we're helping you with the writing. We're not keeping track of deadlines, and so you need to be in charge of keeping track of all those deadlines. And if you have questions, talking to Michelle or the program coordinator or something like that, because we won't always be aware of that when we're talking to you.
Can we review those safety dates that we've set, those prior pre-submission and things?
I don't know the dates, but I know the intervals, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
So I think what Andy's talking about is that there's a form, when you go to defend your prospectus, you don't have to technically schedule the prospectus with the graduate school. So all you have to do is give us 2 weeks to review the document, realizing that we're on like 30 committees, and so we need 2 weeks. Give us 2 weeks. And then, but it's different when you do your final defense. You have to schedule the final defense with the graduate school. So there's a form that you sign that says, we all sign it and say, I have read this document, and it is good for defense. And technically, there's two stages to your defense. You have a written kind of pass, and then the oral pass. And so we have to have 2 weeks first to read your document and make sure that it's even qualified to defend orally. That, you know, and so then if it's still got some stuff to work on, we'll work on that with you first. So you have to give us 2 weeks to read it, and then after we've read it and said this is good enough to defend, then you have to give the graduate school another 2 weeks. So if you're looking at your deadlines and you say, I want to graduate, and this is the last day for a defense, you have to really backtrack at least a month, because you have to give us 2 weeks and then the graduate school 2 weeks. So.
The deadlines are all posted on the Office of Graduate Studies website. I also keep the current deadlines taped on my door for anybody to look at, but they are very important deadlines as well. And we quite often find ourselves in trouble with graduate studies.
So just to be clear, you said if we have a prospectus we're working on, we give you guys 2 weeks to review
After you
before
turn
we
it in.
defend. Yeah, we turn it in, we give you guys 2 weeks so that we can defend our prospectus, which doesn't need to be scheduled for anything. But the same thing happens when we're defending our final project or whatever. We need to give 2 weeks notice for the graduate school.
So it's an additional 2 weeks for the final, because you have
And
to.
if they're right next to each other, then it's 4 weeks total basically, but if they're at different times, just give 2 weeks.
Well, those are two different things.
They are, and the signed, approved form that has been signed by the committee saying that the document is ready to defend has to be, to me, at least 2 weeks before the date that you plan on defending. So however long it takes to satisfy the faculty that you're ready and to get that form signed, that's, you know, an additional 2 weeks or however long it takes. But the form, for me, has to be in my office 2 weeks before the date you plan on defending. Signed and sealed.
Let me just clarify one thing.
Yeah.
So there's a prospectus defense, which is completely separate from the
Final defense.
final document defense. And in both cases, the faculty committee needs 2 weeks to read it after basically the chair has said it's ready. So you want to work all this stuff through with the chair first, and if the chair finally says, yes, it's ready for the rest of the committee to look at, then that's where the 2 weeks starts. Sometimes the chair wants you to share portions or even all of it with the rest of the committee while they're deciding, and that's not the 2 week part. That's before the 2 weeks begins.
You mentioned that we've gotten in trouble for some of these things with the graduate school, and we have. It's because we've been busy being nice, trying to deal in favor of students who come to us late and say, well, can you bend the deadline in the following way? We've decided not to be nice anymore. And so
We're not allowed to be nice. I mean, the graduate school really is.
they have clamped down on us, and a deadline is a deadline. And so just treat it that way. And don't ask us for the favor of, well, can't I do this? Because we can't.
So we need, I understand the 2 weeks for the defense and then, or for the committee, and then an additional 2 weeks once they approve that for the graduate school. At what point should we be starting to contact our committee to schedule the defense? So we have enough time to.
If you wait until the last day that you're allowed to defend, which is on that deadline sheet at the Office of Graduate Studies, you're cutting yourself really short, because you have your defense on that last date. You have 1 week to make any changes, get it to the dean for the dean to review. The dean has 1 week to review it, and sometimes the dean has extensive changes that they want. And that you have to satisfy the dean before it can be submitted as an ETD. And so waiting until that last day, which a lot of students do, makes it very difficult to get through in time.
We just get booked up, so
That's
you'll
what
be
I'm
wanting to
concerned with.
schedule a defense, and we'll be like, we've already got 5 defenses that week, all my available time is booked, you know?
So can I
kind of thing.
schedule a defense with my committee, even though I haven't gotten, and just put it out on a calendar a month, even though I haven't gotten my final approval from the graduate?
I think a good answer to that, and this is kind of a good rule of thumb, is always go through your chair.
Okay.
When your chair feels like because your chair is basically vouching his credibility with the rest of us, you know? So that if your chair says, I think you are close enough that we can make this deadline,
We can start to.
let's start scheduling. And so typically, don't contact committee members. I would always just talk to the chair first and say, hey, I have a question on this methodologically. Can I go talk to this such and such about this qualitative aspect of this, you know? Because you don't want to go talk to a committee member and then the chair looks at it and goes, wait a minute, when did we decide to do this, you know? So a really good idea is just to always go through the chair when you go to the committee. That's kind of just a good way to do it.
Regarding dissertation orals, what are the conventions on bringing committee members in virtually?
The graduate school won't let us.
Zero tolerance. Even if one of your committee members is a Georgia professor.
You have to appeal for it. In that kind of a situation, if it's like an outside expert, that's pretty cool. But generally, if it's a BYU faculty member, they want them to be.
They can't
speak to that. We've done that before. The thing is, you have to get permission to do it, which means that they have to set up the equipment and book a room and make sure that it's all working so that there's no technical glitches. So it is possible, but only in extreme circumstances where, you know, we had somebody in Israel that we had to bring in. And it was kind of not convenient for them to jump on a plane to come over for that. And so we got permission for that. But most of the time, you should be able to figure something out.
But according to the last meeting I attended with the Office of Graduate Studies, that is becoming more commonplace and it's going to be allowed more and more often. So that's not, it's not going to be such an exception.
But probably the distinction is it needs to be someone who's not at this university. It can't be me on my vacation tapping in via Skype.
Take a vacation.
Did you have something else, Charles, back on that?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think the landscape is changing here. I mean, I've been in, the landscape is changing.
So it might be different.
But what they're trying to do is they're trying to maintain the integrity of the process. So what they don't want to see is kind of like what Dave Williams was saying. Say, you know, it's really going to be inconvenient for me to have this, you know, to have all 3 of my committee members here on this particular date because summer times are so crazy, and so I'm going to get around that by, you know, having one person who's on his vacation in, you know, in China, and one person who's, you know, visiting grandma in Florida. I'm going to bring them all in so that we can meet.
I have a question that's one of my own questions, not a student submitted one. It just so happens that I found out after the add drop deadline that I can do some project credits this semester. So I know we just talked about like bending deadlines and things, but is there any way I can add 2 credits to this semester that we're in right now?
On master's projects?
Master's projects.
Master's projects, we can. Those can be special added. Any master's projects, thesis, or dissertation credits can be special added by Claire DeWitt over in the graduate office. So you just need to send me an email, I'll forward it to her, and she'll do that.
Awesome.
Which would be a good thing to do, because one thing that we can't do is retroactively give credit for stuff you've done.
Right.
I did this last year, it was a really cool project, you know. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so email.
So speaking of the credits, I wonder at what point we can take the dissertation credit. Can we take it as we are developing the materials to be used for our dissertation studies, or can we do it as we are preparing for our perspectives? When would be a good time to start taking dissertation credits?
I know with the master's degree, you can take up to 2 credits of it before you have an approved prospectus. Is it the same for PhD or?
It's four credits of dissertation.
That you could take prior to your signed prospectus. One of the things I would caution you about those, one of the biggest traps that our students get into is life is busy right now, so they say, well, I'm going to buy myself out of some credits by using these dissertation credits, and then they don't get the dissertation written that semester because life is busy. And then life gets busier next semester because maybe they get a full-time job, or their wife gets pregnant, or they get pregnant, or they get married, or something happens, and you know, and once you've used up those credits, then you're toast, because then what you have to do is then you have to take 9 credits of real credits and write your dissertation. And then it becomes really, really hard. So I think the caution I would be is, I wouldn't use them until you had to, personally, save them. But you can do up to a certain number before you do
So you
prospectus.
probably just can treat it as a writing credit.
They're writing credits.
If you're
yes.
writing the dissertation, then they take those credit hours.
Or if you're writing the prospectus that semester.
And if you take those credits, and it's the same thing with the project credits for the PhDs. You get 3 credits for doing projects. If you sign up to do project credit, just make sure you really set aside the time. This is 3 credits. I mean, how much time would I spend if I was taking a course? I would spend X amount of hours. Let's make sure I spend at least that amount of time working on that project and making sure that project gets done that semester.
That was gonna be my next question. Is there kind of a rule of thumb for like these many project credit hours translates to, you know, I should be putting in this much time during the day, but I guess, because I could take 2 credits of my project this semester and then 4 in the spring, if that would mean I'm really busy in the spring, I guess. So yeah, if there's a rule of thumb there, that'd be about like a course, I guess,
Yeah.
treat it like a course.
The rule of thumb, as I understand it, is if you think about a course being 3 credit hour course, normally you'd be spending 3 hours in class and about 6 hours out of class. So for a 3 credit hour course, you're looking at between 8 to 10 hours a week
Okay.
for the whole semester. So if you're planning on spending that amount of time, then that's, you know, that's just a general scoping for time.
Okay, cool.
I'll tell you as well, not to scare anybody off, but we have a student who's actually studying course loads across the university as part of her dissertation study right now. And I'll tell you, it's typical in this department and across campus that courses that require technical skills traditionally are far beyond those 3 hours. So just FYI, if you're taking one of those courses, video production, programming, I don't know if the stats would fall in that same category as well, plan on taking more than those times, because that's, at least from what students are reporting, undergraduate, graduate, all across campus, that those courses tend to take a lot longer than those 3 hours to get an okay grade.
The classes you teach.
Yes.
You're gonna take all
Like I
the
said,
time.
I'm not trying to scare anybody off, but yeah,
It's just the nature of learning the material. That's just what it takes.
no, it's actually more fun than the other things.
It's actually
People want it.
It's actually more fun.
Any other questions?
Michelle, did we cover everything that you got from the graduate studies?
Well, no, one question I get a lot of, and I clarified it with Office of Graduate Studies today. Typically, when a student is admitted into a program, you're admitted under a particular graduate catalog that is current in that year. And that's typically the graduate catalog that you would follow through your program. So if we have PhD students in here that were admitted in, say, 6 years ago, that they would follow that graduate catalog 6 years ago. Well, the department is making a lot of changes in programs and requirements, and the student has the option of opting out of the new changes, but it has to be in with the approval of their committee. So it has to be something they sit down with their committee, and if the committee feels strongly that the new changes are more beneficial, then the student would follow the new guidelines. But they have the option of staying with the graduate catalog that was in play when you were admitted.
So let's pretend that I'm a first-year master's student, and I have not yet taken Stats 1 or research or computer or anything like that. But I was admitted under the old rules. I could then elect to have this new system where I only have to take computers or stats and not both or something like that. I could elect to do that if I want to.
Yes.
And your committee agreed.
And my committee agrees. Okay.
Right.
I would like to do that.
And we're going to be changing all the forms.
Okay.
All the forms are going to be changed to reflect the new approved changes.
Since the change is new, all you have to do is make a new program of study form
Yeah.
and get everyone to sign it.
Well, I actually have already taken Stats 1 and I'm in researching
Yeah,
computers.
but that's all, I mean, once the policy has been changed, that's all you gotta do is a new program of study. Yeah.
Okay.
One other thing that might be good to mention, just because I think sometimes some students aren't quite aware of it and it kind of surprises them, is there's, from the graduate school, I think, some guidelines in terms of what you have to be doing to be progressing adequately. Because there's a certain amount of time that you have to complete your degree. And there are milestones that you have to get done in certain amounts of time in order to be progressing appropriately. And we meet together twice a year to just kind of go over our advisees and be like, has this person done her prospectus? She's been here 3 years and she hasn't done a prospectus yet. You know, and then you might get a letter, and this is what I don't want you to be surprised by. You might get a letter that says, you have not been meeting adequate progress. And there's nothing at that point that is going to hurt you, but if you get 2 of those letters in a row, you can be dropped from the program. So when you get the first letter, the point is, you really need to get moving. And usually your chair will be able to talk to you beforehand, and you'll kind of know, if you're getting one of those letters, that you probably haven't been progressing very much. And so I think all you need to really know about and worry about is the idea that if you do need to be progressing every semester, and if you take time off, just be in contact with your chair about what do I need to do to maintain minimum progress, because you should always have that in your mind that I should be always progressing and moving towards getting my degree.
And that brings it up another question that I get quite often. There's an expectation that master's students register for 12 credit hours in an academic year, and doctoral students register for 18 in an academic year. And it doesn't mean 6 and 6 or 9 and 9, it means in an academic year. When your coursework is complete, then it just reverts to the university requirement, which is 6 credit hours in an academic year. If you're working on your dissertation, you've got all your coursework complete, then it's basically 2 credit hours per semester, as long as you fulfill that 6. If you don't fulfill the 6 credit hours in an academic year, the Office of Graduate Studies will drop you. And then I believe the fee to re-up is quite high, I can't remember.
Yeah, they raised it recently.
Yeah.
Like $50? I'm
Like-
just kidding.
No,
Steve, like, I can't go out to eat that weekend, or like...
Steve, like almost ran.
We'll figure in the faculty bonus also.
There's that back.
Who's been taking that? Because I never saw it.
So Michelle, just to clarify, when your coursework is completed, you need 6 credit hours in an academic year, if you're a master's, to stay enrolled for graduate.
Right, and you also need to stay, well, there are some students that can register easily for 2 credits in a semester, or 6 in an academic year, and not be in contact with their committee at all. But because we have these evaluation meetings twice a year, you need to be in contact with your committee, because, yeah, we've had students that have done music and exercise and things like that, and just, they fulfilled the requirement for the university, but have not been making adequate progress in their program, so.
Thank you.
I think that about covers all the questions we got from the email shout out, but if anyone has any more questions, please ask them now, speak now, or hold your peace until the next IPSO seminar. Or just ask your chair, I guess.
And mentioning the next IPSO thing, please respond to the email Buck sent out, basically asking what topics would you be interested in. I think in mid-March, they're looking to do another professional development type, more professional development type seminar.
Yeah, if you thought this seminar was useful, then go IPSO seminars and respond to the other one.
Could I just ask, have you, as students, considered the possibility of sharing your work here in this forum? Is that something that IPSO would want to encourage? Because the graduate programs that I was in before I came to BYU, that was a lot of what we did. It was a place for students to get all their peers and the faculty to react to some of their ideas.
You know what might be nice is before a major conference, like before ARA or before ACT, because when I go to ACT, I don't want to go see presentations from BYU because I could assumedly talk to you guys anytime, right? But I am interested in what you guys are doing. So it'd be really nice to have maybe a seminar where you presented your ACT papers and research just to us. It'd be a good prep, and we get to know what everyone's doing. And
That's an excellent idea. On the form that we sent out for our next IPSO workshop, there is an other category. So definitely write that down if you think that's a good idea. I actually kind of think it's a good idea too.
Edit the form? Is it just a Google form? Just add
It's a Google form. Yeah, we could also do that. We'll give you the option. It'll be good. That's a good thought, because a lot of us are trying to break into the whole world of conferences, and we want to
Well, and
confidently do so.
I think it could be something like, this is an area I think I'm gonna write a prospectus about, but I want some feedback before I go to that work.
Mhm.
So I don't think it has to be I think a dry run on a conference presentation is great too, but I'm just thinking, unless, Andy, you think otherwise.
A Hyde Park corner kind of thing, where you test an idea, we've done that.
Cool.
And if you
All right.
guys, just a plug for one way of doing it, you know, we have a new room where we're just kind of getting set up in this semester. We don't have the furniture that'll be permanent in there. But one of the ideas that we bounce back and forth for that are writing groups. If you want to schedule a room that's quiet, not in a busy place, has a lock on the door, and have these meetings, perhaps weekly. I've had students before to help themselves along with the writing process. Every week they scheduled a time with their peers to meet and write. And if you need a room for that, that's a perfect, I think.
Or just to meet and go over your writing. One of the best ways to actually get your writing done is just to every week have to show up and tell someone how much you worked or didn't work that week. It's actually surprisingly motivational.
Or embarrassing.
Or embarrassingly motivational.
So if you want to schedule it, do we have a something we can use to like start scheduling that room? Should we get maybe we can
It's
get.
like another calendar.
We
like
can
you
get
got
another
for-
calendar, we absolutely can.
All right, well, we'll get a calendar or something so we can schedule it, 'cause there's some courses in there, but we'd love for you guys to start using it for educational purposes.
What's the key code?
It's the same as downstairs. Eventually, they're gonna replace that actually with a card swiper, but we'll get everybody in the program on that, so you guys can swipe and go in and out, but it's the same as downstairs.
Not to bring your card. You bring your card anyway, so you can get through the gate. It's all electronic.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions, we'd like to thank the panel members very much for participating today.